Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm not sure when actually you're going to be watching this, but hi again. So, by the time I'm filming this is actually the 1st of November, and last month I read a staggering number of 17 books, four of which I read, and all of the remaining ones I listened to via audiobook. So, let's actually get started. And it was also spooky season, so I think like there's a theme to the books that I actually read this month. But like bear with me. So the first book that I read, and like always, reading it off my journal, is The Pairing by Casey McQuiston. And so basically, we're following two people here, and it's more like told in a dual perspective in which like they are friends to lovers to strangers to reluctant friends all the way back to lovers, and it's basically just showing like it's kind of almost like a second chance type of romance in which like one is like stayed in America and is trying to get their feet back together while another one moved to Paris and is now like a pastry chef, and how like different types of things that they're going through, and also how exactly like whilst they're on this like road trip through Europe they are meeting new people. There's also like side characters which you just like you've kind of like you seem so fond of them, but also how like everything is just tying up together. And I actually quite loved the story. I to be fair, I didn't really like the first half of the book because of like we were following one of the main protagonists who just had like a lot of angst and anxiety and always second doubting themselves, and it was kind of slightly exhausting being in their head, whereas we're in the other guy's head who literally adores them, the person in the first half of the book, and I was just like, yeah. So I gave it 4.5 stars. The next book I read is basically it's within the same story as the Ray Bear duology. So this is more like is a standalone, but I do recommend reading the first two books before this one. It's The Maid and the Crocodile by Nnedi Okorafor, and I was anticipating this book so much. I actually really enjoyed it. So essentially, we're basically following our main protagonist who, on her 17th birthday, because like she only like learned a trade to be like a house girl, she gets kicked out of the orphanage and has to basically fend for herself. And straight off the bat, she ends up like having like the familiar to like this crocodile god be infatuated with her. It's a gecko, by the way. And so all the thing is basically her like going into this contract, but also having to like help the crocodile with their curse. And people were saying how this was like Howl's Moving Castle. To me, it's not really Howl's Moving Castle. If anything, the only thing that I would say that replicates Howl's Moving Castle is the doors of being able to go into different places through doors. However, this was actually very sweet, like very imaginative. It's also based in West African mythology, and also like the romance that goes on between the crocodile and her as well was also quite interesting as well. And I gave this book another like 4.5, and I was really happy being back in this world. Then the next book I read was Nethel and Bone by T.K. Fisher. It's basically about this one girl who is the third sister, and both her first sister and the second sister were married off to the same king, and she believes that the king is basically killing her sisters. So she's just basically having to like with this one grumpy like old woman, a bone dog, and then this one man that's also within the story have to like tackle to like overthrow the king and basically save her kingdom. It was okay. I didn't really feel like it was really much of it, so I ended up giving 3 stars. The next book I ended up reading is the one that it took me. I swear this book took me a while to actually finish reading, but I really loved it, and I annotated the hell out of it as well. Is The Fool That Saves Us by Tamara Jerry. So we're basically following this one person who is a Nephilim, which is basically descendant from an angel and human. So you know, like in the Bible times where they say that angels came down and mated with human beings and basically had like these giants weird as children. Yeah, she's a descendant of one of those things. And so it's basically dealing with a lot of like religious trauma, having to find a way for themselves. Also like having like the understanding and burden of knowing that, oh, your family does this and this, but you don't actually want to do it. So therefore, how exactly are you going to survive in the world? And then there's like a succubus that for some reason comes into the picture, who reminded me of this one girl. I will set their picture at some point in the video of that one like vampire movie and no series. And it was good. To me, this is like, since this is like the first within the like series, I gave this 3.5 stars. But I feel like going into it, because I'm not even sure if it's a trilogy or a duology, but I feel like this was just more like the introduction into the world. Maybe there'll be a bit more plot afterwards. Then I ended up reading The Ending Fire by Sarah El Arifi, and it was tying up everything so well together because it's the third book in the series, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. Like, don't get me wrong, like I was also very happy to be like in the world back with Hassa, and Anor annoyed the shit out of me. Sila was kind of like understanding her type of thing, but it was more like single-mindedness, and also like the stuff that's going on with the other guy as well. But it was really, really good. I very much enjoyed it, though I will say I did like the second book more because it like really like was a lot more to it, because like the last story was really like just tying everything in together. Then so basically this one story is more, I saw this one girl on TikTok talking about the book, so I was like, you know what, let me just buy the book. It was like what, £6-7, so I was just like, let me just get it. It's called Monster Mixer by Robin Joe Margaret. This one is part of like it's a very, very short anthology of different types of monsters who basically go into this like swinger club and meet other people, and maybe there's a love story or not. I personally really enjoyed because like I put tabs on them as well, is I enjoyed the very first story and the last one. The first one was like Jamie and Vance, and then the last story was, what's their name, River and Silas. And so this was actually just very, very fun of like them just exploring their sexuality, doing whatever, and also the characters were really sweet. And I gave this one 4 stars. It was actually just quite a delight to be in it. It was like a very short read. I read it in a day. After that, I read Somewhere Beyond the Sea by TJ Klune, and so it's basically taking place a few months after the first book, like how the first book ended, and it's also dealing with like a lot of like the adults dealing with their trauma, but also like there's adoption going on, a new kid is coming to the picture, and it's just very wholesome, found family. It also made me slightly tear up slightly a bit, and it was just very nice being back into the world. I gave this one 4.75. Honestly, it could have been a 5 stars, but I just don't know. Maybe if I read it physically it would have been different, but it was still good. After that, I read The Archive of the Forgotten by A.K. Hackworth. And so the first book was The Library of the Unwritten. That was the first book. And so this one is basically following like the events of that one. So the main character that we were following in the first book is now doing something else, and the antagonist of like the first book is now being into Fairfront. But it's also dealing with like a lot of like the dynamic of when you end up becoming like the owner or like the one in charge, and your mentor is still there, kind of hovering but doing something completely different. And also like dealing with the books, and like what exactly is going on, what happens really when these books are not being written, and what happens to all the very, very much forgotten books from millennia that people actually forgot that those books even existed, kind of thing. And it just ties in different types of things. There's also like a lot of like not trust per se, but I would say more of like deception, and also like muses trying to like believe that, oh, humans don't deserve the gift that is to create books, so therefore, you know what, let's not give them actually the idea to use it. And it was very interesting. I gave that one 4 stars. The next book I ended up reading is What Moves the Dead by T.K. Fisher, and this one was, let's not lie, it was actually quite creepy, to be fair. So basically we're following this one person who is a retired like veteran, and so they get like a letter from their friend saying that, oh, my sister is dying, come and see her, kind of thing. So they go there only to find out that there's something very unnatural going on, and also they have like freaky rabbits, and it's basically finding out what exactly is poisoning the water, poisoning everybody, and making these two siblings that the person within the book is trying to like help. And the person is also, to my understanding, non-binary, or basically they're gender non-conforming. And I gave this one 4 stars. It was actually very, very interesting. I really liked it. Then I read A Cup of Sake Beneath the Cherry Tree by Yoshida Kenko. I didn't really rate this one, but this one was really interesting to me because it was tackling different like things about like humanity, friendship, also like how human behavior. And the funny thing about this one is that the book was actually written around like 1392 to 1331, which is god knows how many decades was that. One, two, three, four, a lot, really. Am I tripping? 80 years ago. It- no, I'm being stupid. 18. See, I can't count and I'm studying economics. Jesus, this is bad. Um, yeah, 800 and something years ago. Amazing. And I don't know, because like I just thought like this was also very interesting because like there was a lot of things here that I was just like, wow, this also makes sense. And also was tackling like there was also like an insert here about like how when you're younger you don't really care much for people or like things, but however when you get old you start clinging to the idea of like being close to family. Sure, you might be like a, I wouldn't say like a burden, but like the things that go with it. Or this one that I thought was also like, I was thinking like this is kind of like things like I cannot bear the way people will make it their business to know all the details of some current rumor, even though it has nothing to do with them, and the and then proceed to pass the story on and do their best to learn more. Wandering monks up from some province and backwater seems particularly adept to preying into tales about others as if it was their own concern and spreading the words in such detail that you would wonder on earth how they came to know so much. And I was just like thinking, like, yeah, I used to do this too, but I also know people that do this in real life. So I was just like, oh, it's kind of different when you hear it from a different perspective, no? Oh, anyway, it was really, really good. And this was more like someone I follow from Instagram, and I just like got the book, and it was actually very interesting. So I'm not sad, and I also need to start reading more classics anyway. But like, I definitely still recommend if you want to like have something very short, but also makes you slightly think a bit. Don't get me wrong, some of the things are also like outdated because of like how like the perception of women, but also it was still interesting regardless. Then I also read In the Care of Magic. I annotated this as well. It was actually quite a delight. It's by Robin Jo Margaret. So basically, we're following our main protagonist, Jillian, who is a witch in this like village, and she's basically burnt out to the point of no return because like the villagers don't really care about her or the things that she does. They basically just see her as like a mule that should just be doing the stuff. They don't even know anything about her. Some of them don't even know her name. That's how bad it is. So basically, she just says like, you know what, fuck this, and she's just going to like go back to her family home to rest for a bit, only for her to like summon like a sex demon and things go from there. And Zia, because the demon is agendered, so it doesn't have a, it has like a different set of pronouns, and I really enjoyed this one. To be fair, I read this in a day, and then there's like a little like short novella again that is with, no, like a short story of about like 10-ish paper. It's called In the Care of Magic by the same author again. So this one here, I gave this like 4 stars. I still really enjoyed it, to be fair. And the other one that is We're a Team by Robin Jo Margaret is basically the continuation of this one when she goes back home and how like she basically sets boundaries and is helping people within the like story. I gave that one 3.25. And yeah, I really actually still like the demon because Zir was like very interesting in terms of like what Zir goes through and how Zir tackles those type of thing, and it was just very very wholesome because you could really tell that Zia wasn't really um on board with how things were. Zia was always ever only seen as like an object of nothing really more of like how Zia would want to be perceived, and it was interesting. I really liked it. Then I read The Dragon's Bride by Kate Roberts, and it was okay. It's basically about this girl that was in a marriage with a man that was there was a lot of domestic violence, and how like she calls like this one person in order to like, or being in order to like help her, who kills her abusive husband, and then she goes to live in like another like fancy world where like the dragon needs like heirs. It was very insta lovey and it was okay. I didn't really care much for the story. It was more like something to just read in between. I gave that one like 2.5. Honestly, it's a 2 star for me. It was okay, kind of thing. Then I ended up reading Invocation by S Saint Gibson, and I really like this book. So we're basically following three different characters. We're following David, who's very witty, but also like very bitter about lots of things. Reese, who is like dealing with a lot of conflict between like how he perceives love, but also caring for David quite a bit, but also caring for his wife Moira, and also Moira being like the most like unapologetically herself, and also like how like she's very supportive of like Reese, and also knowing how like David and Reese has like a lot of like um history, and there's basically like a reason why like all three of them weren't getting along before, so that's like a novella before this one. And it was more like a possession story of finding out like, oh, they're very very rich, and they had like a deal with like a demon, and how that is basically backfiring so badly, and they're trying to break the spell before David turns 30, and so much goes on for there. And it's also a polyamorous relationship. It's very very interesting how that dynamic works between all three of them, and I liked it. I only gave this one 3.25 because this is basically the following, and I know there's going to be more books within the series, so I probably will see how it goes with the rest of the book. But like I feel like this was like a good starter to the series, and I really like the writing style. So yeah, I read The Familiar by Lee Bardugo, and so basically we're following this one girl who is a for the longest time she has always had to be like in hiding of herself, always have to like subjugate or like put herself below others just so not to be seen, not to be noticed, and she basically gets very very tired of it. And basically she's like a maid in the house of this one like very poor nobility, Victoria, and her husband, who from my understanding, I don't know, he's not very present, and I don't even think that the husband really liked Victoria very much. And so she go through the notion of like wanting to do more, and then she ends up like having like by doing one misstep of helping Victoria, our main protagonist goes down like a road where it was like basically something that you can see from a mile away just going to be very very bad. So there's like tournaments, there's also like her dealing with this one other person who's a familiar, who she's trying to help but also not sure whether or not she wants to help them, and everything goes from there. And I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. I really really enjoyed the story and also the ambiance, and it's also based in Spain, where obviously the Catholic Church has a lot of say, and every little thing they can like basically burn you at the stake for being a witch, for the most stupidest inconvenience really. Then I read What Feast at Night by T.K. Fisher. It is the second book from the other one within the series of What Moves the Dead, and the main protagonist within that other book is basically going back home to their hometown for a bit, and there is basically like this kind of demon that basically kills people or suffocates people in their sleep, and it goes with that and different types of things that's going on. I liked it a bit. I gave it 2.5 stars. Then the last book that I ended up reading is also from T.K. Fisher. It's called Thorn Hedge, and it's basically about like how a changeling would. So our main protagonist is a changeling. So she was basically a princess, but they changed her with another Fae baby, and so for her, when she moved to like she went to the Fae world as a baby, she comes back visibly a lot older, but in the human world it's literally just been a few hours, and she having to take care of the changing baby and see her parents, even though they don't know that she's her parent. And she's also visibly changed because she was in like an underwater world, and it was very interesting of basically taking care of this like changeling baby for 200 years in a tower, generic wise, and also meeting this one like knight or soldier guy, and things go from there. I gave it 3.25, and yeah, so that is all the books that I ended up reading in October. And now we're getting to all the books I do plan on reading. I don't really have much of a big stack of books because I feel like I shouldn't like not do too much. So all the books I do plan on reading are these ones right here. Yeah. So I want to like read a lot of these. A lot of these are very very short books I can read in like in a day or two, because I'm trying to meet my physical reading quota for the year, because like right now as we speak, I haven't read a lot of books. Give or take, I have read like 4, 5, 6, 7 physical books. However, I am listened to 101, so I'm at 108 books that I've read this year, which is it is a lot. But I also want to read more physical books as well. So this one I was seeing it a lot. People really saying that this book is actually quite good. It is called I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpen. And I know that this one is more of we're following different women, and basically all men and people are gone and they're the last on earth. And I think it tackles a lot of like loneliness and also like the dynamics with the women and different things. And I just thought like, you know what, let's read this. And people say that this is also something that you might get a book slump from. So yeah. Then I want to read this is just a retelling of the same book that I read before. Is Camilla and Laura by S.D. Simpa. And it's basically another vampire story of these two women, but it's like a retelling. And I read the actual classics before earlier this year, so I want to see if there's gonna be like some kind of slight differences. Then I just randomly saw this one when I was just going through like different like books to read. So this one is Stone and Steel by Ebony Bonbra. And so I know this one is basically about this one like soldier general who leaves the kingdom where she is to go fight for her queen, her lover. And so when she comes back, there is basically chaos and it's sapphic and there's a lot more going on. It's a very short book, and I just thought like I've never really seen people read this one, so let me read it. Then, Lord, I've been talking for too long. Then I ended want to read. This is another book because I read so far 2 books from the same author. This is Blessed by the Cupid Distribution System by Robin Jo Margaret. And I know that this one is asexual with also like Cupid, and it's a very short book as well. I don't really know much about this book. I just know that I want to read it, and it's something I feel like I can read in a day. Then there's this one called Mother of Sea by Zata Elliott. I have no idea what this is about as well. I just saw it somewhere and I just thought, you know what, let's read it, and it's very short. Then another one is more like, I started this earlier this year but I didn't finish it. It's Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. I want to finish this book. Then If Bailey Street Could Talk by James Baldwin as well. It's also like a love story about these 2 people who when they were kids and how like the prison system and different types of things going on in America. Then Cecilia by K. Ming Chung. I started this earlier today. I know this one also has to do with obsession as well, because like it's an obsession with like a friend and things go on from there. And then the last book I want to also read is Lagoon by Nnedi Okorafor. This is basically a science fiction story taking place in Lagos, Nigeria, and how like they're tackling this, and also has to do, it's like a standalone book, and I've had this for so long and I want to read it, and I'm trying to read it, or I hope to read it. So yeah. And I also have like 2 honorable mentions that I feel like I know I'm not gonna get to these, however like I'm just letting them be out there, you get me? So the one here is Inseparability. Intricability. I know I'm saying that wrong, I'm so sorry. And I don't know, they're all, what are they? Not human. Monster romance. Polyamory. I've been into polyamory for a while now, like reading them, so I don't know why, but I just saw it and I just thought, you know what, I would read this. And the other one here is also from SD Simpa, is The Sting of Victory. I do not know what this is about. All I know is sapphic, so I will read it too. But yeah, how was your October reading, and what type of books are you planning to read in November? And if you're still here, regardless, thank you so much for watching and have a lovely day, yeah? Bye!